Hey there guys, Tryptic here. As many of you know, I've been working on the Tryptic's mod, balance mod for fleet operations for many years now, and a lot of the changes that I've made have started to get undocumented. I haven't been keeping up with change logs and things like that for a while, so I wanted to put together a video or a series of videos real quick just to show you guys everything that's in this mod. And I'm going to move really fast with the assumption that you guys can, pause the video and go back wherever you want. So this video is just going to introduce the general changes and then the changes to the Borg, and then I'll make videos for the other ones. And it's going to be fast and rough, but hope you guys enjoy this as much as I do, because I love the concept of balancing RTS games. So we're going to start with things that apply to every single race. Artillery range has been increased from 1100 to 1200 very slightly. Every artillery range turret has its range decreased slightly, so perimeters and Federation torpedo turrets can still be shot by artillery ships without retaliating. Every starbase now lists the avatar right there in the tooltip, and I've done a lot of other tooltip updates that will give you a lot of information about a ship and what it does. Well, I guess not so much on these, but well, I've added speed to all of the tooltips as well. Every player now begins with 2,000 dilithium, 1,000 tritanium, which is half of what it was previously, and you also get 2 miners that build for free at normal speed after starting. This is to smooth out some of those rush strategies, such as warp and rush, that were a serious problem previously, where if you had just enough resources to get it and you really didn't have to defend yourself. At the same time, I have increased mining rates for every moon. In 327, it's 450 dilithium per minute and 300 tritanium a minute. In Tryptic's mod, I've increased it to 600 dilithium a minute and 400 tritanium per minute. So this is it's a 33% increase from the previous, or you could say that the previous is 3/4 of the Tryptic's mod income, or you could say that 3 moon pairs in Tryptic's mod is equal to 4 moon pairs in the previous. With the way I've calculated it, based on the lower starting income, if you get 2 moon pairs, you will have about the same amount of income as you would have in the first game in 327, around the 10-minute mark, I believe. It varies slightly based on how quickly you get your mining out. In addition, I've increased the rate at which stations unload resources. It doesn't affect the Borg so much, but for other races, if there are 2 moons near each other, you can generally get full mining efficiency with 3 miners per moon and 1 mining station in between them. For regular ones, you can get almost full mining efficiency from having a single miner. I mean, for having 2 miners on your station. This is a bit more perfect if the mining station is to the left of the moon. If it's to the right of the moon, you lose like a second every cycle is about 15 seconds, I believe. Yeah, every mining cycle is 15 seconds, and you lose maybe 1 second. So you're losing, what is that, like 7% of your income if you use 2 miners. So if it is a longer game, it is better to get all 3 miners. But in the majority of cases, if you can get a mining station to the left of the moon, then 2 miners will do it. Oh, kitty. I have a cat here. Pardon me. Let's see, other changes. Stations that have torpedoes can now miss. This was a bug in 327, and Dominance Noctis, the Fleet Ops dev, has very generously given me the solution to that. There are also plenty of small bug fixes and tooltip updates that I have done with Tryptic's mod. So that's all I can remember off the top of my head that applies to every single race, so I'm going to go into the Borg changes now. The Borg Assembler is a little bit cheaper to build, has only 300 crew, so it can actually be captured if the enemy makes a focused attempt. The Borg Freighters have lower defense than they do in 327, and Optimize no longer gets a bonus to defense. The Detector, it's a bug in this version that it has 80 crew. in the future it's going to have only 60 crew. However, it has a 1 hit point shield. This means that it cannot be boarded without shooting it at all. You have to get a single shot on the scout before you can start boarding it. This is very nice, I felt, in early situations when Borg would always get their scout stolen. The starbase, the one that you start out is regular, however, your upgrade path is completely different. And you have the ability to create new starbases, although they do not have any weapons. So a regular one costs 800, a basic new starbase costs 800, 400. It is called an expansion matrix, and while it can build all of the same things, it doesn't have any weapons. It has, all of these upgrades are non-instant, they take time to complete, and it will be a little bit more vulnerable than normal while it's completing. So the base version is, there are the stats as you can see. It can be upgraded with every faction has a single economic upgrade that they can get on their stations in addition to their military upgrades. So the economic upgrade for the Borg is called the logistics matrix. For every one that you have, it allows you to upgrade up to 4 miners into the perfect logistics version, which gives you minerals over time of both types. So as you can see here, there is a cap. It's currently 16 because I have 4 of them over here. There is a basic upgrade you can do here that costs 400, 200, and it gives you basically the stats of a starting starbase, as well as the logistical upgrade. If you then upgrade again, you can get, well, there is one with both the torpedo and the logistical matrix. If you upgrade again, you gain access to the fortification matrix. Fortification matrix has a special ability that causes nearby stations to gain a torpedo weapon as well, not affecting starbases. So over here you can see the radius, I believe, is strategic. It may be artillery though. No, it is artillery. So I added this just to show if it turns blue, even though this is not a fortification matrix, this is just a visual indicator showing if you were to upgrade it into a fortification matrix, this is the range at which it would add that. And then, oh yeah, since it isn't a matrix, it doesn't have it right now, but it would gain a 50 offense torpedo weapon. This means that a late game Borg area with lots of buildings centered around a fortification matrix can be very defensible. And this is important for Borg because they need to protect their building ships late game. However, remember that these torpedoes can miss, so smaller ships actually can still raid relatively effectively. Finally, every race has an ultimate starbase upgrade. And this is the ultimate starbase of the Borg. You can only have one at a time. It is called the Queen Repository. And as you can see, its offense is much higher than in regular fleet ops. And it also has the fortification upgrade, which causes, like I say, it becomes quite a bastion with other ships, with other stations around it. Let's see, this has actually reminded me of other changes that were made in general. So, one of the changes made in general is that all special weapons in the game have been recoded. In general, they do more damage and they are no longer dependent on system value. There is a new mechanic called resistance. And resistance level is in the tooltip. Oh, it's not in these. Resistance level is in the tooltip of every ship that has it. You'll see there it says resistance 2. Resistance provides a reduction in the amount of damage that special weapons deal, and provides a resistance to disabling effects. Disabling effects no longer have their chances reduced, so if a disabling effect has a 50% chance to go off, it has a 50% chance to go off of everything. However, the amount of time it disables for will be dropped by resistance. I'm just going to go through this quickly. Resistance level 1 is a 20% reduction. Resistance level 2 is a 32% reduction. Level 3 is around a 40%. Level 4 is around 45%. And level 5 resistance is a 50% reduction in all of these things. There is also a sort of hidden resistance level 6, which is 50% reduction to all damage and immunity to disabling. So every ultimate starbase has immunity to being disabled. This is important because the game has a few more weapon disables that can be used on stations. So even a high-ranking starbase can have its weapons disabled during combat, which makes it pretty useless. However, every ultimate starbase is immune to this disable, which is a very key part of keeping it online and defending. Okay, other stations. The conduction matrix has had its dilithium cost increased. It's now 800 to 200. And the incubation... I'm going out of order. We'll go through it real quick. The incubation chamber has its price modified, and the assimilate incubation chamber, the ability of its slow assimilation for nearby hostiles, the range is longer and it is much more effective. So if there's a group of assimilate avatar incubation chambers and you attack them with a bunch of small ships, you will start losing ships if you don't keep an eye on your crew. Yeah, we'll come back to those. The Borg economy has been completely reworked. Collective connections are no longer a resource, and instead they use a vinculum system. The way vinculum systems work is there are small vinculums, medium vinculums, and large vinculums. They cost 200, 100, 600, 300, and 2,000, 1,000 respectively, and each one of them forms the core of a Borg vessel. So when you build a scout cube, you first have to get a small vinculum completed from the conduction matrix. Then you're able to build one scout cube. If the scout cube dies, then the vinculum can be used in another ship. So vinculums really serve as a cap. Here I have 16 small vinculums, but only 12 small ships. The idea behind this is that Borg ships are more expensive to build the first time, but if you lose them and rebuild them, then obviously they are cheaper because you already have the vinculum. In this case, you can also do things like a ship that is on the low end for its vinculum. Well, here, I'll just show you. Small vinculums are used in scout cubes, dodecahedrons, and adapters. So naturally, a scout cube has a cheaper overall price now because they all share the same vinculum. Whereas an adapter, it has more cost in the adapter and less in the vinculum. So it's a little bit more expensive to replace than the scout cube would have been. This has more of an impact on the mediums. Medium vinculums are for assimilators, spheres, pyramids, and diamonds. And because it's 600, 300, the cost of an assimilator is actually very low. So if the assimilator dies, replacing it is extremely cheap because most of its cost was in its vinculum. Whereas if a diamond dies, the cost of replacing it is much higher because in this case, the vinculum might have been half the cost of the ship, whereas in the diamond's case, it's more like a quarter of the cost of the ship. Large vinculums are used only for cubes. However, cubes have had their stats their cost has been greatly shifted in Tryptic's mod, where it's largely based on the defense of the ship. If you have a cube that has low defense, then its cost is significantly lower, around 4,000 total, and since 2,000 dilithium is used for the vinculum, that means that about half of its price is in the vinculum. So if you have a combat cube, this is not a combat cube, by the way, it has high defense. If you have a cube with defense around like 130, then it is way cheaper and also very cheap to rebuild if it dies. This is because, honestly, when it comes to cubes, defense is the most important value, because if the enemy focuses down a cube, they can kill it very quickly if it has about, well, let's see. Yeah, a low-level cube has about 4,000 hit points, while a high-level cube has 8,000. So double the hit points means it lasts twice as long in combat. So a tactical cube is more around 6,000 or 7,000 dilithium, and that makes it so that losing it hurts more, even if you do have the vinculum. But I'm getting into the discussion of how it works rather than just showing you guys what it has. So the other mechanic that they have is the collective connections are now being used in the way that tech slots used to be used. You start out with no slots, and then you get 3 slots from this collective adaptation technology that you get at the conduction matrix. That unlocks points that you can use on these special abilities. And this game bugged out because I did some map editor things. However, normally you'd be able to access all of them. So the first level of adaptation is at the conduction matrix. It gives you 3 slots, and then you have access to sensor relay, high energy slicer, and regeneration. You see regeneration takes 2 slots. And then the transmission matrix has access to the remaining technologies, which give you 5 more slots and increase your weapon damage by 10%. and then the final one increases it by another 10% and gives you 6 slots. I've also added icons to every station that upgrades things that just turn green once you have it, which means that you can look at your opponents and see which upgrades they have gotten for their ships. I will return to these, actually. So for the ships themselves, as I've mentioned, the Scout has its crew slightly lowered. However, it has a 1 hit point shield. The Probe has had its price reduced. Oh, that tooltip is old. It does not have any special against freighters in this version. But it has had its price reduced, and it is now buildable without a conduction matrix. So it is possible to get a couple of these out very early in the game, even before your conduction matrix. But everybody knows probes are pretty weak. They die pretty fast. The Scout Cube, the intercept and regen modules have not changed much. However, the EM module has a special ability now, which is if it places a sensor relay, every few seconds that the EM at a ship with an EM module is near the sensor relay, it will send out a cloak detect ping. It's not a very big one, but it's very effective. If you really need active cloak defense, you can research, you can get a Collective Action 1 and sensor relays, and this will be your earliest cloak detect. This is also triggered by EM modules on adapters. The periphery module has been completely replaced with the transwarp module. The way that this works is it has an aura around it, and, well, no, this is it. It doesn't have a range indicator. I think it's long range. Basically, every small vinculum ship that it flies by will get this animation, and that allows it to use the transwarp drive special. It isn't researched by technology, it's just whether you are close to a transwarp cube. And once you have it, you can just go boom. So, fitting a transwarp scout cube into a fleet of scout cubes or dodecahedrons or something allows the entire thing to transwarp, as long as you keep them around. It has a more advanced version that you can research, where once you get the transwarp research, then you can activate transwarp calculation. The scout cube holds place, and it will then also grant the transwarp special to large ships. So you could give it to a cube or spheres or diamonds. However, if you do this, since the scout cube has to hold still, it's probably going to die if you're using it in combat. The intercept dodecahedron. Adapted photon torpedoes have been modified in Tryptic's mod. Their ratio has changed. In the previous version, they dealt 70% bonus damage to small, 70% reduced damage to battleships, which means they dealt 30% damage. And against stations, they dealt only 10% of their damage. In Tryptic's mod, I have changed this to be plus 40% against small, minus 40%, so deal 60% against battleships, and minus 70%, so they deal 30% against stations. In addition, adapted photons kill 1/3 of a crew every time they shoot, and this does not affect stations, however. So if you are building like an assimilator strategy, you can get away with a bit of boarding using early Borg. Also, the boarding rate of every Borg vessel has been increased by 50%, so they are all effectively troop ships, and they've all been given the transport attack ability, which basically you use that. It's an AI thing where they will attack, and the moment the enemy's shields go down, they will start a boarding action, and every Borg ship has it now. The adapted photons on the dodecahedron have a slightly higher chance of disabling things because of the way that I have reworked resistance. However, they only affect ships with resistance level 0, which means so one thing is battleships in this game automatically get resistance 1, and a number of passives also give people resistance. So any battleship will not have its subsystems disabled by a dodecahedron. You can see here, yeah, the adapter has several modules. A lot of Borg ships have higher resistance because obviously they are more vulnerable to special abilities, but that depends on what modules you put on them. For example, the regeneration module gives you 1 point of resistance. Oh, but I didn't get a regenerate Doge. The axial assault ability works a bit differently. It will fire at 3 targets at once. It will still target its main target. And you can see its damage goes up, but its chance to disable subsystems per shot drops off. It's way more effective than it was in 327, basically. The vinculum dodecagon has had both of its abilities reworked. The neural transceiver now provides 300 energy to everything around it. So I can use this to transwarp and then immediately repower and do more with it. The vinculum refresh can target any Borg vessel and recovers 1,000 energy to it. In 327, this could only affect ships with a holding beam module, but in Tryptic's mod, it can affect any ship. The adapter. Oh, yes. So there is also a special ability for the Borg. It is regenerative processes, and this allows every ship that is built with a small vinculum or from the starbase gains the regeneration special. They gain an alternate version based on what type of modules they have. So ships that do not have a regeneration module gain a slow regeneration ability. It doesn't take very much energy, but it regenerates them relatively slowly. We'll see that, 95%, 96, 97. This does allow early game Borg ships that make it out of combat to regenerate within like a minute instead of, like before where they did not have a repair yard and they were just screwed forever. Ships that have an adaptation module or a regeneration module, however, gain rapid regeneration, which we will see here. And that takes a whole lot more energy but recovers way more faster. It's closer to the sphere's regeneration. Also, the passive regeneration rate for having a regen module has been greatly increased. And before it was 10%, now it's 100% for small ships. So a regeneration scout cube passively regenerates twice as fast as a intercept or other scout cube types. For the adapter, I have removed the normal adaptation ability. The other thing I've added in Tryptic's mod is command ships. There are ships in this game that passively grant combat bonuses to nearby ships of the same race and team. The adaptation module for the adapter turns it into a low-level command ship. It's called Node Command, and it only affects small vinculum ships and probes. So this is always passively going on, and you'll see here it has this icon on it. These do not. So yeah, you fly them closer, they get the command bonus. That is a 20% rate of fire bonus for flying near an adapter that has the adaptation ability on it. And this one has an EM module, so it will also send out cloak detect pinks from sensor relays. There it goes. Moving on to medium vinculum ships, also known as minculum ships. The assimilator has had its regeneration module increases to 50% bonus. And like I say, its cost is very extreme in that replacing the ship, the actual build cost of the ship is very low. It mostly relies on its vinculum. The vinculum cost is most of the cost of it. So you can build a bunch of these, and if they die early, you can replace them very easily. For the blue beam, it assimilates a little bit slower, I believe, than it did before. However, the energy cost is significantly lower, so it can go for a whole lot longer than it used to be able to. Also, every large command ship, so not the adapter, but many others, and every troop ship or assimilation ship in the game has gained the tractor beam ability. So if there is a ship with disabled engines, it's drifting, you can tractor beam it with assimilators, and also with pyramids. And other races can tractor stuff that they capture or stuff that gets damaged on the battlefield. For spheres, the beam sphere has received a rework. It goes back to an earlier version of Tryptic's of fleet operations. I guess I can't show it here because I don't have a bunch of enemies. However, every beam module added adds a target and adds 20% overall damage. So that means that, for example, if you have a single beam module on a ship that already had beams, then your beam will target 2 enemies, and each target will take 60% of what the damage would have been based on its offense stats. So it's overall 120% damage, but it's 60% to each target. And then if you have 4, I'm losing it off the top of my head. I want to say 40% to each, yeah. And that way it adds up to 160% total, but it's spread out over 4 targets, which means it's very difficult for the ship to get individual kills. However, when you get several, then they can become very deadly. The regeneration ability is a lot cheaper for energy, and if you only have if you only have 2 regeneration modules, then it's actually relatively good. Whereas before, having the 3rd regeneration module doubled its strength. Now having the 3rd one does make it better, but having 2 is still viable is the idea. And also the regeneration, having a single regeneration module on any medium or large vinculum ship gives you 30% 30% regeneration rate in addition to the +1 resistance level. So you'll see this one actually has no resistance, which means it takes full damage from special weapons and could be disabled by a Dode. That is a triple beam prime sphere. And then this one, by having, let's see, this is a triple regen holding beam sphere, and it gets 1 resistance from the holding beam module, and it gets 1 resistance from at least 1 regeneration module. And there's tooltips for these in the others when you're building them. Also, for the sphere specifically, I'm actually probably going to take this out in a future version. However, if a sphere has a holding beam module on it, it gains access to the nanite special ability once it's been researched. I wasn't able to research it because, like say, map editor stuff broke that. But it can cast nanites, however, it can only cast them at short range if you have a holding beam, which is renamed to a pacification module, on a sphere. The pyramid has had its number of holding beam modules capped. I had another pyramid. There we go. You can no longer build a pyramid with 4 holding beams. You can only have a maximum of 2. However, its general cost has come down a fair bit. Let's see, and its regeneration is a lot more powerful even with only 2 regeneration modules. It only takes 120 energy per second instead of 200. Yeah, not much else has changed. Oh, right, the efficiency of holding beams. Having a single holding beam assimilates 9 crew per second. Having a second one gives you 12, and having a third one, which I don't think I do, makes it 15. So having even just a single holding beam module on one of these ships makes the boarding strength very powerful. And then additional ones, they don't increase your actual boarding speed all that much, but they also give you lots of system value, which allows you to capture more. For the Diamond is the higher level command ship. It has Matrix Command, which affects everything other than cubes and other diamonds. The other thing is a ship that has command cannot be affected by command. So diamonds cannot affect other diamonds, and adapters with the adaptation module cannot affect each other. So a regular diamond is the same as it was before, except it has obviously the slightly stronger holding beam, and then it has the command ability, which automatically gives 20% rate of fire to nearby cube or scout spheres and everything else. It affects everything other than cubes, because obviously cubes can be affected by Bring Order to Chaos, which is a grossly powerful ability. Another interesting reaction is every faction has an extreme vision range mechanic, and for the Borg it is relays. So these sensor relays, they're normally dropped in an inactive state where their sensor radius is like, it's a normal unit. However, if a diamond flies near one, it will upgrade it into its active state for 5 minutes. And as you can see, the active state uplink has very good vision range. So by dropping one with another ship and then flying a diamond near it, it will go into an active state, or just by dropping it out of the diamond. And boom. So you can see it just upgrades the sight, and that gives you a very nice late game strategic vision ability for the Borg. Oh, one final thing to mention is that nanites, their disable chances have actually increased a little bit because of the way that I reworked all of the system value things. However, I've added a 10 supply cost to casting nanites, so casting it over and over and over again does get expensive. It's still really good though. And this creates some interesting strategy with the vinculums, where you could build, assimilators early on and spheres, and then once they die, you'll have medium vinculums freeing up that you could turn into diamonds. Diamonds do require the transmission matrix to build though, while the other medium ships can be built right away. And the large vinculums build from the conduction matrix. In this version, you can build them right away. In future versions, they'll require the transmission matrix. Probably shouldn't be building it until you have a transmission matrix anyway. Technology-wise, not much else has changed except that high energy slicer. Once you have it, all of the tooltips are updated for the ship, so that tells you how much damage it does per ship. Devastating attack is similar. The holding beams of the stations are... is it not updated in this version? In the final gold, they're not going to be infinite like they were before. There will actually be energy on the station. It will be consumed by the holding beam, so they can't just they can't automatically capture something. They do have to expend energy while they're doing that. The transwarp research enables the ability on the transwarp scout cube I mentioned. Data mining increases all of your sensor ranges. Boarding. Boarding parties are now, you can see in the tooltip how much it does. And since every Borg ship in the game has had an increase in boarding strength, basically the boarding special will kill exactly however many people it says on it. So if it says 40, it will kill 40 crew on the target. And finally the nanite special. Oh, finally, there are also the dodecahedron relays that are placed by a dodecahedron with the relay module have different abilities based on what type they are. The intercept one gains access to the Dode's ability where it has it can disable subsystems on targets with resistance 0 with a focus on life support. It will also gain access to the nanite special ability once you have researched it. So you can cast nanites from an offensive Dode relay. The defensive Dode relay, you can't really see it here, but it has a decently long vision range. And it has access to the regeneration special once you get the regeneration ability. So that makes it extremely hard to kill. Yeah. Oh yeah, I didn't have that resistance level for that, but I will. If you have the vinculum, then you get one that has the neural transceiver. It also has a blue beam assimilation, which I'm still tweaking the AI for. I don't know if it goes off automatically if you set it like this, but in the future it will automatically do that. It also has the ability of the Assimilate Avatar's incubation chamber, where anything that flies within that circle you see long range will get slowly assimilated. It's 3 crew killed every like 4 or 5 seconds. And then finally, it can get holding beams once you have researched them at the transmission matrix. So we have a capture relay, we have a extra cloak detect and regeneration relay, and then we have an extra offense and nanites relay. Also, there is a special ability on all of the relays called Relocate. It costs 25 supply, and it actually allows the relay to move. It's more vulnerable during the state, but once it finishes, it will be able to move around like a regular relay again, or a regular Dode, and then you can place it elsewhere. Since it costs 25 supply to relocate, and it also costs, I believe, 15 supply to place. Let's see. There we go, and then we can place it again. Yeah, 15. So the actual process of repositioning a relay is 40 supply. So you don't want to do it just infinitely. However, it is nice if you place it somewhere early, knowing that you can move it somewhere else later on. And ta-da! Cool. Up here, I'm just going to go through the nodes real quick. Well, I guess we've already introduced the small. All of the prices of these ships have been completely regenerated by me using a spreadsheet based on the offense-defense of the ship, as well as special abilities. And in later versions of Tryptic's mod, they're going to change again, because I'm always tweaking them. So yeah, Scout Cube modules. You can see I have update all these tooltips so that it shows everything. Oh, why did I get those red ones? Need to look into that. Let's see. Did I miss anything? No. State objective. Obviously, the regular assimilator still requires 3 modules to get up to its full strength, while the assimilate avatar only requires 2. Well, there's an example. Let's look at the sphere. So we can see that, yeah, the beam modules increases your defense against beams, also adds additional beams. The regeneration module, having at least 1 regeneration module increases your resistance by 1. having holding beam modules increases it by 1 each, and then EM modules, I believe, increase it by 2. So the adapter has very high, but torpedo beam. Oh, need to update that. I have a lot of tooltips that take a while to regist. Oh yeah, I need to mark those. Well, this is a cube that has it is a battleship, so it gets 1 resistance. It has a single holding beam module, so it has another one from right. No, it has 2 holding beam modules, so that's 2 resistance, and then it has a regeneration module. So that's why it has 4 resistance on it, which makes its resistance 45% about. So it takes about half damage from special weapons, and any subsystem disabling effects will affect it with the normal chance. However, they will only last half as long on it. In addition, every turret in the game automatically gets resistance level 1, and every station in the game automatically gets resistance level 2. So every station automatically resists 32% of all damage, so they take about 2/3 damage from special weapons. The ultimate starbases have resistance 5 in addition to being immune, so they take half damage from special weapons. There are also weapons in the game, however, that deal artillery damage. Artillery damage is affected normally against ships, however, stations' resistance levels do not affect it. So it does not deal 2/3 damage to stations or 80% damage to turrets. The resistance of an ultimate starbase trumps that, so even artillery weapons still deal half damage to ultimate starbases. You're going to have to chew through them on your own. And let's see, I believe that is every change I have made for the Borg. Let's see, we covered the freighters, we covered their... Oh, also to remember, the freighters themselves do get the regeneration special once you research it, which means that they can repair while they're under combat. However, they can't repair while they're docked, so if the enemy has decent firepower, they can still kill this. It sort of makes it the equivalent to having a repair yard for other races near your mining. So even though they have lower defense, in the later game they are actually a little bit more tanky than they were before because of this regeneration special. Let's see. Oh, when an incubation chamber is built, it instantly gives you 50 supply, and then it works like an ordinary incubation chamber. So this just makes it so that when you do run low on supply and you have to start building incubation chambers, you get a bit of a quick infusion of supplies. And some things, like I want to say the cube actually costs less supply overall than it did previously. Yeah, 82 plus building the cube was an 80, so it's like it's around 160 supply for a cube. Previously it was around 230. In general, I think most ships have had their supply cost slightly lowered, although the diamond has had it increased. So yes, conduction matrices, build these. Oh, every research station in the game has been turned into a shipyard. If you build a research, if you select a research button, it will kick you out of the research thing, which is unfortunate, but you can queue them up. You can also use hotkeys. These are small, medium, and large for the vinculums, or S, M, and L. Some of these are missing, but most ship production and special research in the game has had hotkeys applied. So if you pay attention to that, you can queue up multiple vinculums on these. These are kind of like your shipyards. Yeah, so that's every special weapon. I've covered the economy. I've covered every Borg ship. And I've covered specials like the sensor relays. So yeah, it's quick and dirty because I'm going to be making changes soon, and then I'm going to have to make new videos. But I hope you guys enjoyed. We have the Discord active if you guys have any feedback or ideas you want to add. Or if there's anything I missed about the Borg faction here. So let me know what you think. This is Tryptic signing off. One last thing I forgot to mention to you guys. The diamond's ability for strategic vision also applies to dodecahedron relays. So if you fly a diamond near a dode relay, it will get strategic vision. I forget if it does it for 5 minutes or if it only lasts for as long as the diamond is there, but that's a thing. Okay, thanks guys.